All right, fellas, what's going
Yeah.
on, boys? How's everybody doing?
What's up?
Hey.
What's up?
All right, we're going
Good,
live.
good.
How's it going?
You guys know it's episode 5. You guys,
Is it
we've
5?
done this.
Wow.
All
We've done
right.
this 6 times. Well, including Shawn giving the intro to the channel. It was awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna serve up some crazy material tonight. This is super controversial stuff, but being parents of teenagers, almost all of us, man, it's definitely worth talking about because there's a lot of brothers and sisters out there that just, they're not quite sure what to do. So tonight we're gonna serve up the topic: should teens date? Pretty scary stuff.
Spoiler alert. No.
We're gonna do it right after this. All right, guys. Man, it is good to see you guys. How was the day?
Decent.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Decent.
Well,
Yeah.
You what?
Welcome back. Welcome
Oh.
back from Sedona.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate
Yeah.
that. I got a little tan. Can you see?
Yeah,
Nice.
you're looking a little
A
sunny.
little glowy.
Just
Yeah, we went
little-
to
yeah.
we went
Toasted.
to Sedona and then we went to Scottsdale, Arizona. You guys, Arizona? Pfft, hello, so pretty. I didn't even know it was so pretty.
Yeah.
But the tourist town of Sedona was like 10% tax, sales tax on everything. I was like,
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, give me my tip back because dang, that was crazy. Yeah, but it was pretty awesome. We had a good time. My wife's stepsister got married, and it was beautiful. My youngest was a flower girl in the wedding. So jump on our Facebook, take some photos. You can see it. It's pretty awesome. So, all right, guys. Tonight we're going to be talking about teens and dating. Should they date? So I'm pumped, and we are unfortunately light a cosmonaut. I don't know why I say that. We are light. Matt could not be with us, and I was pumped to hear his take because not a pastor, but just a regular old dad, right? Now I mentioned that because argue right, you're obviously 3 boys in your home, and you're also a youth pastor, and so I'm excited to hear what you have to say. But I wanted to hear like what Matt had to say, being a dad of 3 boys, because we have dads of 3 girls on the other end of the spectrum here. And then we have, Cronk, he has 1 of each. So, but they're babies. So I'm excited to hear everybody's take tonight. So let's just kind of dive right in. So Josh, man, we're going to start with you. I wanted to hear kind of, argue bright, your thoughts on what was the high level kind of position that you share? Let's just go around. Yay or nay? Josh, argue bright. Yay or nay? Should teens date?
It depends.
Oh boy. Okay,
So-
Cronk.
so,
Cronk. That was not
yeah.
one of the options. Cronk. Yay or nay?
I'm going to say no, but I understand that it's complicated to address the
Okay,
issue,
Dad.
but
Okay,
I'm
Shawn.
gonna just say no,
Yay or
real
nay?
quick.
Shawn. Yay or nay?
What do you mean by date?
Okay, there you
Yeah,
go. I'm
there you
just
go.
good. There, you guys are horrible. Yes or no? There is.
Can't
Now-
get
Depends on
pigeonholed,
what you
man.
mean.
No, I'm
Yeah,
just.
I'm not getting boxed
Come on,
in.
man. Yeah,
this
you're getting
early.
boxed in. Pal. No, we. Okay, I'm gonna say no to the traditional idea of dating. That's me. But you're right. It does come to definition, which is the point of the question, right? So, Josh, argue bright. Define from your position dating.
Well, that's tough. So there's always what the world shows what dating is, and we see it in all different avenues. We see it, with in movies and what we see with our peers when we're a teenager. And so, I mean, typically it's back in the day when we were young, you'd actually have to talk to somebody to ask them out. Do you remember the first time you asked a girl out? Like, do you remember those feelings?
Suddenly, I
You
get
actually
terrified.
had to, right? Now they just send a text or a message or drop a DM in their Instagram or something, and they're never going to experience that walking up to a girl or a guy and say, hey, do you want to go out on a date? So anyways, basically though, what I always talk about, where I always start with students is asking the question why. Like, what are the motives behind their wanting to date somebody, exclusively boyfriend and girlfriend with somebody? I think that starts when you talk about the motives. It really opens up where you can bring in biblical perspectives into that.
That's good. Well, Shawn, what do you think? Brand new intro, brand new situation. Scenarios have changed dramatically for you
Sure.
as of late. So I'm sure you've thought, prayed, considered. This is a topic that's going to come up. Where are you at? Where you and your wife? What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, our situation's different. We adopted, a teenager who already had somewhat of a social life that, it's not very just wise to strip her from that. So she had a boyfriend already
okay.
and before we, in the home where she was staying in Columbia. So, the first thing we didn't want to do is just be like, oh, well, you can't have that boyfriend anymore. I think there was wisdom in us just sort of waiting it out, because believe it or not, it took about a month and that relationship dissolved on its own, which I thought would happen. Now we just kind of have open dialogue with her. The neat thing is I think she's so bummed out about that relationship not working out that she's actually has no interest in dating. I mean, she wants to go to prom, but she's actually going with a friend from church, a gal. So they're just going to kind of go stag together and have a good time at the prom. Yeah, I mean, as far as my position on it, and the reason I said it depends earlier is, if it's a prom date, it's some sort of event with other friends. I think this is cultural too. I mean, how old was Mary when she was married or betrothed to Joseph?
That's right.
I think she was like 13,
how old was she?
right?
13,
somewhere
14,
around there.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is, in America, we've created adolescence. We've basically created this age group, and we've extended childhood all the way up until the late teens. But other cultures, I mean, there's other cultures where it's perfectly acceptable. So the question is, I think you asked is like, okay, as Christians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should we allow our teenagers to date? And then so as Christians, we make our decisions informed from the Bible, where we get our marching orders. But if we look in the Bible and we're like, okay, well, teens were dating, they were getting married, they were having kids. So maybe that's, we got to kind of figure out our culture today. So I think it's a lot more important. I think it's a lot more important.
Arranged marriages, and they were like, just think of like Jacob, Leah, and Rachel, like that whole scenario. Like, we wouldn't want that now. Like,
right. Well, and it's a lot more important, I think, too. Then my question would be, okay, so if they do date, which all four of us did when we were in high school and we were teenagers, who they date and why they're dating them is more important, I think, to ask.
Yeah.
Because the Bible does say,
Go ahead,
the
sir.
Bible does say something about, well, I was just going to say, I'll finish up with this.
Yeah.
The Bible does say something about the type of person we should yoke ourselves with.
Correct.
Yeah. Cronk, what your take, man? I know you got babies, but obviously there's a path, right?
Right. Yeah. I when trying to answer this question and figuring out where I stand on it, I have to rely on personal experience, our culture, and then whatever I can research online, and also line those up with what does the Bible say about how we are to live as Christians, and certain events and things that our culture promotes, and the way that our culture promotes dating. And I like the way you said, Keith, that in the traditional sense of today's dating is a hard no. It's a hard pass, because our culture and our very worldly school systems and environments that most of our kids are in, dating means you go out with someone, you kiss them, you do you go places, and you try to push the limits on how intimate you can be with that person. That's a hard pass. In my experience, is something I have to rely on is my past, how I experienced. I experienced a lot of, heartbreak and depression because of that. And when I did some research on the subject, it showed that, okay, so, and I liked what Josh said too. He said, what's the purpose? And I think Shawn said the same thing. Why are you dating? Why do you want to date? And as a Christian, it should be, well, to, find the person that you're going to marry. And then some people may say, well, to develop, social skills, or, there's benefits to it. But there are studies that have been done, and just a quick research I found online. Georgia State University did a study and found that that students that are in high school that date are significantly more susceptible to depression and obsession, and the ones that did not date are significantly higher in leadership skills and social skills. Also with WebMD says that only 2% of relationships from high school end up in marriage. 2%. In 1940, it was upwards of like 40%, something like that.
Wow.
So in our culture, the purpose of dating, if it's to find your spouse, you have a 2% chance of finding your spouse in high school. That's a really low chance. So answering the question of why is really important.
Well, I love that, man. That's really good. And I'll just kind of put my 2 cents in to kind of round it out. So I feel like we had defined, like, why are you doing what you're doing? And there's kind of Shawn, you mentioned adolescence. We've extended this adolescence, exactly what you've said. And we now run adolescence and we confuse adolescence. When does young adolescence end and young adulthood begin? And young adulthood used to begin a lot earlier, because the teens that got married when they were 13 in the Bible didn't have to carry on the family farm, because the whole family was dead by 45, and so there's a whole lot of responsibility on, early, the first century, people, first century communities and those kinds of things. But I would argue that in our society today, there's way more cons to dating than there is pros. A lot of people cite dating for, well, they have emotional experience and they know how to deal with people and they can balance. But at the end of the day, there's a maturity level that has to be associated with these things. And they're just, I personally don't feel in our society we're preparing our kids for the fallout that inevitably comes from having a bad relationships. And then, we try to prepare our kid. Like, okay, well, who are you dating? Like, that's the solution. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I personally feel like the kids dating today, they're, again, far more negatives than positives. And if the understanding of dating is something other than the method by which, some people would call it courting. I don't know if we still use that word today, but the idea where you're dating for the purpose of finding your partner for the rest of your life, and you're getting to know them to the degree that you are glorifying God in the relationship, in a permanent nature. This is a permanent relationship that you're trying. You're not just trying people on like clothes. And so, and then that process of, growing in a relationship together in a holy way, we're allowed to experience, relationships, and they're protected. They're done inside the confines of Scripture. They're done in a biblical way. And so, again, like, people use, 13 years old in the Bible, but they were in a courted relationship. They were in a structured relationship where they didn't do there was no shenanigans. As a matter of fact, if somebody got pregnant before they got married, they were ousted from society. So there's a lot of those things that we forget about inside those early, those earlier days. So in our society today, again, we talk about adolescence and adulthood. And so that the maturity level just doesn't exist in our society today. I personally believe for kids to be able to maturely and, effectively manage relationships, to be successful at them, obviously when you get into early adulthood, 18, 19, they're still called teenagers, but they're not teenagers really anymore. They're young adults at that point. And by then you should have the maturity level to be able to manage a relationship, and be able to pursue another human being, another person, with the direct intention of being able to be united with them to glorify the Lord for the rest of your life, with the purpose of marriage as the ultimate goal. So, and again, young adulthood, I personally don't feel like that is, that's at a time when they can maturely handle all of the stresses. What are some of the pros and cons, Josh? What do you think, to relationships, at an early teen year?
So dating relationships lead to intimacy, right? And so there's a lot of diminishing returns. And when you're in a relationship with somebody, you will continually push the boundaries. And I use an illustration of like a ruler, and you're moving just an inch down the ruler, and then before long you've traveled the whole distance. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, is how, like, and there's a big buzz right now about purity culture, and how there's a lot of attack against how the purity culture was in the 90s and 2000s and stuff. But purity is something we're called to. You think of 1 Timothy 4:12, right? We're to set an example, like people who are young are to set an example in their purity. But purity demands a plan. And if our kids don't have a plan, if they are, and here's the thing, you don't have, like, dating relationships aren't the only way people step into their to jeopardize their purity. Our culture's a hookup culture, right? And our teens you don't have to be boyfriend and girlfriend to go mess around. And
That's right.
And I think we have to make sure our kids are equipped and prepared, and their minds are set on those things. You think of like Proverbs 4:23, right? Guard your heart, or it's a wellspring of life. Matthew, Jesus talks about if you look lustfully on somebody, it's like committing adultery. So those things, it's a hard issue that I think we have to make sure we're talking to our youth about, because it's easy to compromise in those scenarios and end up being someplace you never thought you'd be, never planned on being. But you gotta have your list. You gotta have intentionality, and you gotta be prepared as a teen to know what's important.
That's good, man. So, and let me kind of give a caveat. I meant to say this a minute ago. My experience, or my position, is from a position of having my 3 girls, raising my 3 girls. Like, we didn't adopt them. They weren't, the court didn't assign them to us, or, it's a very traditional family. That's the position I'm speaking from. So I just wanted to kind of context that. I don't have any say into other, people's experience.
And here's one thing that I've said for a long time is my goal is that I would raise my sons to be the type of guys, to be the type of young men that, Keith, you would be okay with your daughters dating. Like, I want to raise young men who are respectful, honorable, and love Jesus, that if they're 17, 18, 19, and they're dating somebody, that my friend would be like, no, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I think that's what has to be my motivation in that area with my kids.
Yeah, at the appropriate age and time, right? So when is that, Shawn? When is the appropriate age and time? How about that for the hot question of the day?
Sure. Well, I think it's a little bit nuanced. I think, like you said, you touched on there's gender differences, why, okay, so it's easy just to give out rules to your little ones, right? And you don't have to explain why. And I mean, you can essentially try to do that with your teenagers, but I think it's just going to lead to provoking them and causing them to potentially rebel and just do it behind your back. So I think with the gals, a lot of them might be in a position where they want to date because they lack confidence. They're insecure. They want validation because their dad may not be giving it to them, And so I think it's so important as a dad of girls that we date our daughters, that we take them out, that we love on them, that we show them how a man should be by the way we treat their mother. And that means we we do our best not to argue with their mother in front of them. We do our best to show affection to their mother in front of them. And so setting the example. So when they see some of these boys, because that's what they are, boys, that they're going to school with, that they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with these boys, So it's like, it kind of does our job for us. Cause ultimately, I mean, do I want my daughters to date as a teenager? No, I don't. But I want to be able to parent them to a point and disciple them to a point where they just don't see that they also recognize there's no value in it. Like we as fathers recognize for them, there's no value in it. Does that make sense?
That's great, man. I love that.
I couldn't agree with you more, Shawn.
And I typed that up, and I appreciate you reading that so well, man. Thank you. So just kidding, man. That was really good. Cronk, man, do you have a dovetail on that, babe? What you got?
Oh, I'm just going to say, Josh and Shawn, they got actually you too. You guys have the privilege of being experts in one gender, and I have to learn both genders. So I'll just cherry pick from you guys, different approaches. I mean, Josh, he's got all boys, and his approach is to, gird his boys in and bring them up in the Lord and to be respectable men. And Shawn and you have the privilege of, training little ladies how to be little ladies and how to, look for the right kind of guy at the right time. And that I'm really glad that you guys touched on this, and I knew you would, but this is where I was thinking behind it all too, is that, as parents, I understand that if a parent is too hardcore with their kids, and this is something my wife is always telling me, we can't be too harsh with them, too hardcore with them, because then they're going to want to rebel, and they're not going to not want to do it for the right reasons. And, I think that I couldn't agree with you guys more. We want to be able to raise our kids to recognize, what is the wisest choice through life. And, in my experience of, dating and at a younger age, I feel like I've wasted a lot of time, and it was a lot of hardship that I went through that was unneeded. And also, I would say our culture is that with social media, it makes it really, really hard for kids to recover from a broken relationship, because it just causes them to, really obsess and watch that person's every move. And it's hard anyways, because you go to school and you see that person every day, and, when they move on or whatever, it's just heart-wrenching, And so, I think those are some challenges that our kids face these days. And yeah.
Oh, that's good, man.
Shawn, where'd you go? You left us.
So one of the things that I was going to say is that, it is, first of all, it's really good insight, what you had said, Argubright, and, what Shawn had mentioned. And it just comes down to why, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of, Shawn, I had mentioned that I really appreciated what you and Argubright had said, and also your contributions on the data that you had provided, Cronk. But the ultimately it comes down to, why are you dating? If we're going to be intentional in everything that we do, why are we dating? Why do you feel the need to date? And what is the ultimate outcome that you're trying to gain? What goal are you shooting for by dating somebody as a teenager? And having this discussion with the teenagers. So,
I think, well, it's like this idea that dating isn't necessarily ungodly. It can be, but it's not necessarily in its whole just surface view, right? But it can be dangerous. And if you love Jesus and you want to honor him, live for him, you're going to date in a way that honors God, and it's an example to other people.
What is
right?
that? What does that look like? What is a dating to honor God?
It's straight up First Timothy 4:12, right? let no one look down on you because you're young, but set an example in your speech, your conduct, your love, and in faith and in purity. Like, it's just straight up, like, if you're dating somebody, you would want to look different than what society is showing. And so if you're a sold out follower of Jesus as a teenager, then you ought to take serious how you conduct yourself in your romantic relationships, no matter how old you are either, right? Like, we should do the same thing as adults, as parents, as husbands. Like, we should take serious how we conduct ourselves in our relationships. And so, yeah, I just think it's an important thing to say, like, may not be the wisest, but if you feel like if that's where you're going, like, be careful, be careful.
What age, Shawn? I mean, obviously, you've got a 17-year-old, right? So, what about
Yeah.
Vivian and Stella? Things are a little bit different for them because of the, like what is the age? Like, is there an age?
I mean, sure. I mean, I don't know if there's an age, but I think the age is north of 18 in my book. What I'd prefer, what I'd hope for, but yeah, I guess I'll navigate those waters when they get there. They're 5 now, but yeah, I just I think I hope from 5 to 18, I'm able to instill in them a confidence in the Lord and their faith with God, and that if they do go on dates, what it would look like is them going to a feed my starving children event and packing boxes full of food, and like that's their date, like with another Christian kid, and that's what they do, and it's chaperoned by other people who are there
with groups, groups of
voluntarily,
people, friends.
Yeah,
voluntarily chaperoned.
Yeah. And so, but but am I gonna, if I find out they're on a Christian dating site, and am I gonna let them stay on there, or like any dating site for that matter? No, like I think again, it's nuanced. I think there's wisdom, and not every situation's the same. But yeah. So as far as an age, I'm not quite sure exactly what that would be, but I would hope it would be after high school. I think that's what I would want my girls and raise my girls to do.
I think I probably, we should probably close it out here, but I think in kind of closing, I would say, I would agree with you, man. And it's probably, I don't know if it would be after high school, but it would be at an age where they are able to appropriately manage themselves to where, their idea of glorifying God and finding a husband that is also going to glorify God. And then it's an appropriate time to seek that relationship. In high school, it's not an appropriate time to seek that relationship. They're in school, maybe not even in.
And there's so many other things they could do that would be much more beneficial for their time, and with friends and with activities and developing themselves. I would say, if I was asked, the later the better, later years in college preferably. But yeah,
Shawn,
statistically speaking.
I was just going to say, I think it was mentioned earlier by me that that giving them these boundaries might cause them to rebel, and I just want to be sure that as parents we are commanded to do that, and we have and so we shouldn't avoid setting standards and rules in our home just because we're worried they might be disobeyed. The reality is our kids have disobeyed most of our rules at times, and we've had to discipline them for them. And so, whether it's, hey, did you clean your room? Yes. And you go in there, it's not clean. So they lied and they didn't clean the room. So just and then you work on that. So I guess my point is like, we still, as parents, are going to be held accountable before God on how we stewarded these children and the rules we set, and we should enforce the rules. And so I think it depends on the family. But yeah, if don't let their ability to disobey your rules prevent you from making the rules in the first place. We need to have rules.
And I love that, man. I think I would say that we would all agree that the best way for our kids to do ultimately what we think is in their best interest, according to Scripture and how we've been given charge over our children's lives, and their lives are in our care, is by making them want to do it because they see the value in our example.
Yeah.
And so if we can live that life, like Shawn, you were talking about, loving our lives well, my daughters hold me accountable because if I go on a date with them and I don't open the door for them, they're like, you open the door for mommy every day. Why aren't you opening my door on a date? Kind of a thing. And so, it's that kind of stuff. And if we can lead them by demonstration, an example, and then they want
You're
to
making us
do
all look
what
bad,
we
by the way.
did.
Thanks a lot.
What's that?
Said you're making us all look bad, by the way. Thanks a lot.
Well, I do other things very wrong.
You don't open the door.
But I was just gonna say, but if our kids want to do something because they saw how successful it was with their parents, I think that's ultimately a huge win for us. And I would probably,
And I'd say too, it's my last thing was piggybacking what Shawn was saying is for them to understand why you would have such rules. So if you were to set up like, hey, you have to be 16, 17, 18 out of high school, but really help explain the heart behind why you think that is wise for them. Like we've never set out an age for our kids, but Eli gets asked a lot by people like, hey, are you interested? Yeah. And people are asking around like, hey, is Eli dating anyone? Like these girls? And he's like, why? There's no point. Like there's no reason to right now, but this for them to understand when, or why you would have those rules in your house, I think is important.
Yeah. And we say when, and the answer is when the Lord brings someone in your life who glorifies, him, right? So, at that appropriate age, not when they're 13. So, you guys are awesome. And that was really cool. Any final thoughts before we wrap? That's awesome. So good. You guys. Way to close it up.
That's some good nuggets.
I just did my final words, man.
No, that was good final words. Shawn, final words. Hit me.
Oh yeah, just it's funny. I got married when I was 34, so I really didn't need a date for 34 years because I met my wife and we got married 4 months later. So I guess my point is like take advantage of this time. You're single and you're available to serve the Lord, and don't waste your time with counterfeits. Don't waste your time in relationships that are.
I love that.
Yeah.
So. As a matter of fact, and let me say this too, to compliment or to enunciate what you had said, right? And that is, I don't look back on any of the relationships that I had before my wife and say, those really prepared me for my wife. None of them did. Those were disasters. No. Every one of them were disasters.
They're all a waste of time.
So, and I just love that you said that, man, because that's 100% true. Not one of my relationships before my wife ever was like, okay, yeah, this one failed, but really prepared me. The next one's going to be it. Like, no, it was not it at all. It was the Lord brought the one into my life, and it was easy. And so, anyway, man, that's really good stuff. All right, you guys, appreciate you guys. If you're checking us out for the first time, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell button, and get notifications every time we drop something on the Persevere channel here. And we'll be getting some more information soon about the podcast platform that all of this will be going to very soon. And remember, Era Vest Rep established 2019.
19?
All right, fellas. You guys be good. We'll catch y'all on the Flip Side next time. Later.
See ya.